Iowa State University soil science professor Mike Castellano was on UNL's East Campus earlier this fall to present a seminar on nitrogen loss in corn and soybean fields. It's a topic pointed to when talking about the Gulf of Mexico's dead zone, an area where nutrient pollution from ag and developed land runoff creates an unlivable environment for aquatic life. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration said the dead zone this summer was the largest it had ever measured at more than 8,000 square miles. We talked with Mike before his presentation and began by asking why nitrogen loss is getting more attention.
A couple years ago, a few years ago, the EPA decided we needed to reduce nitrogen loads to the Gulf of Mexico by 45%. That's a tall order. And that didn't get much attention, though, because the Gulf of Mexico is not exactly in our backyard, right? But then a couple of years later, the Des Moines Water Works, which serves nearly a third of the state's population with water in one way or another, decided to sue drainage districts over high nitrate levels because they're also home to the world's largest nitrate removal facility. And so that's really what turned the spotlight on nitrogen and water in Iowa.
Explain how nitrogen or nitrates get into the groundwater.
So oftentimes the first thing we hear is fertilizer, fertilizer, fertilizer. If you just stop applying fertilizer, everything would be all right. Or if the rates were reduced a little bit, everything would be all right. That couldn't be further from the case. So in Iowa, there's 10,000 pounds per acre of nitrogen that naturally occurs in our soils, whether we farm them or not. To put that into perspective, a farmer's applying about 150 pounds of nitrogen per acre, or 1.5% of the total that's already there, in fertilizer every year. And so right there, that's one indicator that fertilizer is not the main problem or the main cause of nitrate loss to the waterways. Another good example is nitrate loss from corn and unfertilized soybeans. They're equal, if not a little bit larger from soybeans. And the reason for that, the reason for the nitrate loss, is because most of that nitrate's being lost because there's no crop growing. So if the soil's warm and wet, microbes naturally transform that 10,000 pounds of nitrogen. They'll do about 2 to 4% of that per year, 200 to 400 pounds per year, naturally transform it into nitrate, a compound identical to fertilizer, and then if there's no crop growing to use it, we lose it.
Meaning what, you want a crop in there the entire time?
Well, that's one strategy to reduce nitrate losses downstream, and cover crops would be an example of that, right? So growing crops for longer periods of the year than corn and soybeans are growing is one way to reduce nitrate loss. That's why cover crops are a good tool. So they grow when corn and soybeans are not growing. They cover those early spring and late fall periods where the soil can be warm and wet, conditions that are conducive for the microbes to transform that organic nitrogen into nitrate. But they don't interfere with the corn and soybean crop too much. There's a whole nother set of, and we call that an in-field strategy. So that helps keep nitrogen in the fields for our future crops.
You said that was an in-field option. Are there others?
There are. So we have in-field options to reduce nitrate loss that hold the nitrogen in. Cover crops is the great example. Alfalfa might be another example because it's a perennial crop. These edge-of-field practices, these are practices that remove the nitrate after it's lost from the field but before it goes downstream. And these practices, they can be used in tile-drained fields. So a good example of those are denitrification wetlands at the bottom of watersheds. So we take out a couple % of the acres from a watershed, take it out of production, route the tile drains into the denitrification wetland, and they can be extremely effective at removing nitrate.
Can we have all of this? Can we have soil health? Can we have yield? Can we have water quality? And I think to add in here with some of these, economic feasibility as well.
Yeah, can we have it all? Can we make money, have great water quality, produce a lot of corn and soybeans? And I think we can do it. It's all about targeting the right practice for the right place. And when I say the right practice, I'm talking about nutrient loss reduction practices. So we know we're great at growing corn and soybeans. Where we need to improve is reducing nutrient loss off the farm, while we continue to improve corn and soybean production, of course. But the real challenge for the future is targeting specific practices to the right place. So where are cover crops most effective? Where are they most economical? Where is the denitrification wetland the most effective and the most economical? That's the future.
Do you think these things can happen without some sort of government regulation?
I think they can happen without government regulation, but not without government assistance. So, this is coming from Iowa, for example, The reason why we have such a great economy in Iowa is agriculture is the backbone of it, and I don't see that changing in the future. So I'd hope everybody would be willing to pitch in and make some of these changes.